The Select Board meeting of Tuesday, February 19th to order, and the first item is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Are there any changes, amendments? Kathleen, any changes that you know of?
Nope.
Okay. All in favor of approving the agenda as drafted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Next is approval of minutes of our January 22nd regular business meeting.
Move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any amendments, changes to the draft minutes?
I didn't find anything.
Okay. Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes of our January 22nd meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I'll abstain.
An abstention? Yeah. Okay. And next is citizen comments. Are you all here for something that's on the agenda? Okay.
I have a citizen comment.
Okay, please.
Should I say
Come right up here.
So I am here to talk on behalf of Middlebury College students about the plastic bag ban that's being proposed.
Can you state your name, please?
And I'm Molly Babin, a Middlebury College student. And here I will read you a letter from Middlebury College students that was signed by 112 students in the past week. Dear Middlebury Select Board, we Middlebury College students support the passing of a town ordinance to ban single-use plastic bags. While many of us are not registered to vote in Middlebury, we believe that our voices should be considered in this process. We are frequent customers of Middlebury's businesses, and we would therefore be directly impacted by this ordinance. For many of us, Middlebury College's emphasis on environmental sustainability contributed to our decision to attend this school. We know that our future depends on our current actions to mitigate the environmental degradation that has been exponentially increasing over the past centuries and decades. While the state of the environment appears dire, we are optimistic that policy change can make a tangible difference in decreasing our negative impact. According to National Geographic, plastic pollution is worth mentioning in the same breath as climate change. Globally, 9 million tons of plastic enter the ocean every year, and by 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. This has devastating effects on wildlife, as 700 species are affected by plastic pollution through entanglement and ingestion. It does not make sense to continue the use of plastic bags, as we only use them for an average of 12 minutes, while they continue their environmental impact for centuries. However, plastic bags are dangerous at the local scale as well. Using the Mass Green Plastic Bag Cost Calculator, we have found that Middlebury uses 4,513,500 bags a year, which equates to 513 per person per year. We students highly value the natural areas and wildlife in Middlebury. We believe that it is the town's responsibility to keep our woods and waterways clean, protect all species, and preserve the natural beauty that attracted us to live here. Our current consumption of plastic bags is not aligned with our town values. Due to the global and local environmental impacts of plastic bags, we fully support an ordinance to eliminate them from Middlebury. Changing policy will ensure that long-term habits are formed among Middlebury student residents. Plastic bag bans have been effective in states such as California and Hawaii, as well as hundreds of towns and cities throughout the U.S. A ban on plastic bags has been tried and tested, and its proven success should make for an easy transition in Middlebury. Thank you very much for considering the position of Middlebury College students on this issue. We believe that a ban on plastic bags represents something much bigger than a single piece of legislation. It represents a movement of increasing environmental awareness and energy towards change. Signed by 112 Middlebury College students.
Thank you. Could you pass the letter so we can scan it into?
So the letters in here.
Okay, thank you. And your name for the record again?
And my name is Molly Babbitt.
Molly Babin.
Molly, thank you. Okay, is there any other citizen who's here for something not on the agenda? Okay, we'll move on to the liquor license, outside consumption, entertainment permit approvals. And Ann will walk us through that.
Well, in your packet, you should have a list of the applications that are being presented. me, and this is a short one because there are no entertainment permits on these, and none of these have had any comments on the inspections from the police and fire chiefs. So you will get another batch next week at your meeting, which were ones that came in later. And I think there will be a new one coming, probably not next week, so a new license coming.
Okay.
So, yeah, and there's no entertainment permits with any of these or anything, so these are all pretty straightforward.
Okay, if you've had a chance to review them all, what's the pleasure of the board on the,
Motion. I make a motion to approve the applications for 2019 first and second class liquor licenses and outside consumption permits as presented by Town Clerk Ann Webster. Can I do that as an and or two separate motions?
two separate motions, please?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Are there any questions of Ann? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the first and second class liquor licenses signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay.
Okay, and then second is the annual blanket approval for catered events at Middlebury College. And this just saves us from having to get permission from Kathleen for the board for every single one that they send in. which-
Right.
I'll make a motion to approve Middlebury College's request for blanket approval to serve liquor at catered events on the college campus from May 1, 2019 to April 30th, 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions on that? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Ann, are you going to be here later, or are you leaving?
No, I'll be here.
Okay.
Maggie? You're on the agenda next to discuss the town meeting article on plastic bag ban.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'm here with two of my colleagues, Amelia Miller and Amy McInich, and together with some others, we've been working on the plastic bag petition in Middlebury. And one way to think about the plastic bag pollution problem is that your kitchen faucet is running and your kitchen's flooding. And the first thing you do is you turn off the tap and then you clean up. The problem with the plastic bag pollution is we've been doing exactly the opposite. Plastic bags are gushing out of the faucet, and we've devoted efforts to trying to clean up the mess or recycle plastic, and neither one of them have worked. And it's been decades. So our kind of vision for a plastic bag ban is it's akin to turning off the tap, and then we can clean up. So that's what we're here, is to urge the select board to consider turning off the tap of these single-use plastic bags in Middlebury. The petition that we've been circulating to Middlebury voters, 80% of the people we've approached have signed, and we've also garnered some endorsers. 13 Middlebury businesses: Buy Again Alley, Community Barn Ventures, Dan Freeman's Leatherworks, Edgewater Gallery, Frog Hollow Bikes, Green Mountain Adventures, IPJ Real Estate, Main Street Stationery, Middlebury Natural Foods Co-op, Otter Creek Yoga, the salon called Parlor, Sweet Sicily, and the Vermont Bookshop. In addition to that, 3 Vermont entities, Vermont Public Interest Research Group, 350 Vermont, and Middlebury Area Land Trust have endorsed this petition. And this is what we want. This is what we're seeking. We would like to transition away from single-use shopping bags, both plastic and paper. We don't want the ordinance to just transition away from plastic and have people start using paper or even thicker plastic. We want people in Middlebury to develop the habit of bringing their own reusable bags, something sturdy enough, something washable enough for hundreds of uses. And what we don't want to do, on the other hand, is throw this petition in your lap and then run away. What we want to do is stick around, and we want to help with the transition. So in addition to the petition, we've been doing several things in the months that we've been working on this. we've had several public education talks. We've been going around to the merchants, talking to them about the petition, the impact of the petition. We've been answering questions and concerns, and we want to help the merchants with the transition. We've recruited 2 Hannaford Career Center students in the graphic arts class to develop a Middlebury-specific plastic, or non-plastic shopping bag specific to Middlebury, and help us with a public service campaign. We have prepared suggestions for customers to break the plastic bag shopping bag habit. We've developed a list of strategies for store owners so that any of the negative economic consequences of a bag ban could be ameliorated. And in fact, if everybody does their part with a plastic bag ban, merchants will actually be able to save money because they won't have to buy plastic or paper bags if everybody brings their own. And finally, we've amassed a ton of research. We've been doing this for months. My colleague Amelia Miller here has done a public policy paper on it, and I worked on a successful ordinance in Carmel, California before I moved back to Vermont. So what we want to do is we want to share the information we have, the experience we have, to help the town and the select board with this ordinance and with the transition to a plastic bag-free environment. And finally, the view that we have is that because 100 billion of these single-use plastic bags are used in the United States every year, we've all contributed to the problem. We therefore all have a responsibility to fix it, and towns can influence cities, cities can influence Vermont, and we'd love it if Middlebury could participate in this. So thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Maggie, was it you who came before us close to a year ago?
No, that was Amy and
Oh.
Amelia.
Okay, yeah. I remember that, and we talked about a process, and I applaud you following the process really the way we've intended it to be, to generate from the community up as opposed to the select board dictating something that impacts everyone. And so, you know, I think you've put a lot of effort into it, and we'll see how the town votes. It'll be on the ballot, and you know, the education you've been doing has been beneficial, I think, for everybody. Next on the agenda is,
Is it okay if I ask some questions to Maggie?
yeah, if we
Can I
have
ask?
questions that, yeah, absolutely.
First of all, thank you, Maggie, and the college student who was here. She's not here now. Thanks for bringing this up. It's very important that we talk about this. My only concern is when we switch to a reusable bag, what's the transition period and what is the strategy? What are we trying to tell people to use meanwhile? And you and I have discussed, Maggie was gracious enough to come and talk to me about this. I think switching to paper, I don't think is a great alternative. It actually is harmful to us, small business people. It's not convenient for us to use paper. So meanwhile, if you have an outright ban, how do you cope with that?
Well, the efforts that
Come up to the microphone.
The efforts that we want to put forth include educating people to bring their own bags. And among the various ordinances that we've seen passed across the country and in other countries as well, there are various ways to cope with it. First of all, most ordinances include a transition period to allow the existing stockpiles of plastic bags to be used so that the merchants don't have to eat that cost. Some ordinances ban plastic bags outright, and then unfortunately sometimes what happens is that the transition is to paper or to thicker plastic, and that's a route that we don't want to take. Some ordinances say that plastic bags of a certain size are no longer being able to dispense, and there's a small charge for a paper bag. And it could be the cost to the merchant, it could be the cost plus a little, and typically, if there's a charge, the charge is handled two ways. Either the merchant keeps it and sells it like another product in their store, or on the other hand, sometimes the money that could be saved if some person wanted to buy a bag, that money actually wouldn't go to the merchant, it would be going to an environmental fund. And a third way to handle this is that merchants sometimes put money in a kitty for every bag that's not taken from a store, or they will deduct the cost of that non-used bag from the bill of the customer. So there's lots of ways to approach it.
So what is your ordinance proposing? To switch it to paper, or? That's what I'm a little bit confused about this, because what I'm looking at is a plastic ban.
Mm-hmm.
But we are not talking about paper, which is actually just as bad, in my opinion.
So we haven't gotten to the point, because there hasn't been a vote yet. The vote will actually be asking the select board to draft the ordinance, and that's when the work of what's in the ordinance takes place. So our hope would be not that there would be a transition to a paper bag. And whichever way that the select board thinks is the most effective way to accomplish that, we would absolutely endorse. But we feel the same way you do. We don't want the impact of the ordinance to fall solely on the shoulders of the merchants, especially the small merchants with narrow margins. What we would like is for the community to participate as a whole. And if it's the merchants and the customers and educational efforts and the students, we think that together we can all accomplish something so that people get a habit of bringing their own bags. And that would be the best outcome we can see.
I'm just wondering whether the article is really doesn't say enough. In other words, you're talking about, the article talks about banning plastic bags.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I noticed that the Middlebury Co-op is in support of this. I shop there regularly, and of course they've switched to paper bags. They use paper profusely. They, to be sure, encourage customers to bring their own bags, and my wife and I do. But it seems to me that what you need is an ordinance that bans the use of plastic and paper bags. I mean, paper bags really is not, paper is not the solution.
I agree with that.
It really shouldn't be perhaps part of the transition. And I think that, you know, when you think about the development of environmental changes, I mean, one of the reasons why we're using petroleum is to get away from using wood.
Mm-hmm.
And fossil fuels generally. I mean, we're a replacement from denuding the forests, and I think that we have a similar situation. And you talk about community education, but there is a certain sense which you're asking the select board to draft an ordinance, a law, and we are in fact a society under law, not a community that operates according to sentiment. I think this is a very important issue, and I think I'm not opposed to going in the direction that you're proposing, but what I'm suggesting is that we really need to be upfront about what our ordinance is going to accomplish. And the ordinance should not just say we're banning plastic bags. It should say what we need to do is develop a system, perhaps, and why not, where if you want to buy something, you have to bring your own bag. I mean, I think that putting the burden on the shops is to provide something that isn't really a solution, is not a solution to the problem that you're trying to solve. And I'm not sure how the select board would draft this ordinance. I'm not opposed to its doing it. I support it. I don't think Brattleboro has accomplished it, if you look at what they've done. So I really think it's a very complicated problem, and we can't just address the tip of the iceberg.
As far as we're concerned, what is in the ordinance is obviously up to the select board. We would welcome the opportunity to dialogue with you, share the information we have with you, and keep this open channel going, because there are just, you're right, a lot of dimensions to this issue. And if what we want to do is accomplish a bottom line of, no more single-use shopping bags, then, like I said, there, excuse me, there's various ways to go about that.
Perhaps we should identify that that's the goal, see, and not say, well, in the meantime, we'll try and educate people, and so on and so forth. I think what you're asking, we're a legislative body, and our purpose in drafting an ordinance would be to accomplish a certain outcome. And I don't disagree with that as outcome. I support it, but I think the outcome is not just the banning of plastic bags, you see, and that I think is it's a task. I mean, I think that it would be. I'm not sure that we have a precedent. We can't go to another town and say, what did they do, you see? And it's a big undertaking. And I think what we need to do is to say to the public, this is what we want to make as the rule of law with respect to the use of these things, you see. And,
well, one thing that we have learned is that we're not the first horse out of the barn.
and I realize that.
87 towns in Massachusetts have done this, and more towns in Vermont have started, over 100 cities in the U.S. So there is lots of ordinance language, to draw from. And my understanding is of this petition, it doesn't bind the select board to use the exact wording in the petition.
So can I just try to kind of check where we're at on this whole thing?
Yeah.
So I hadn't budgeted time to discuss the
Okay.
particular ban for tonight, because this was an opportunity for Maggie to present what is going to be on the ballot. The ballot is an advisory ballot, as I have read it and understood it. If the town votes to support that, it would become then a priority item for us in the next year as a select board to try to draft something, work with townspeople, and it could very well move in the direction that you're a proponent for, as I understand, Victor. But it might be different, but it would become then a priority. Originally, it was asked to be a priority of ours, and we had a lot on our plate, and I said it really needs to be developed from the citizen up, if it is to be seen as something that's going to undertake a lot of our time. And I think we'll need to have the discussion and the dialogue at the select board level, but also engaging the townspeople through a variety of methods as to what is the right solution for Middlebury. And I think we're going to have to devote some time if it is voted to be a priority for us. But I was hoping not to spend a lot of time on it tonight. It's more of an opportunity for citizens that are watching to understand. And some good questions here as far as citizens that are watching understand really where we're what the rationale for it is. And there's some stuff on our, for those of you who are watching, if you read the packet tonight, there's a lot in the packet. And I encourage people to educate themselves before they vote.
And we'll stay with you as long as it takes. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Would you have time for one more minute from a community member, if I share something very briefly?
Very briefly, please.
I'm Marita Schein, a longtime community member, and I think there are two things that at the moment we can take the opportunity because it is already a growing excitement in the community. I went to the repair fair the other day, and the community has this thrust of getting away from one-way use and really helping each other. So a group of community members informed by the work that has been done through Amy and Maggie, and then also at the college, got together and we just pooled a lot of material and we just sewed very simple bags. And we are going to have enough to hand out at town meeting for people just to give them a transition. And all it says is, reduce plastic waste, use cloth bags when shopping, handmade and donated by your community. And I just wanted to put that out there. If we create some excitement, then I think this will be a very possible goal.
You've all
to
been
reach.
sewing those?
Yeah, it's easy actually. We can teach everybody.
Among other things.
That's great.
And we'll also give them to businesses. I've talked to
Thank
Farad
you.
and to other business people. So thank you for the
Thank you.
time.
That was worth the minute.
And, all right. And,
Thank you, Marina. She's one of the.
Next on the agenda is the Addison County Regional Planning Commission's request for signature of the follow-up letter regarding Route 125 safety. Has everybody had an opportunity to read the follow-on letter?
Yes.
Any comments on that?
It's a good letter. Keep it going. Priority. So you need a motion
Well,
or?
So how do you feel about signing it?
so I was looking for some comments on that.
So I'm not against the safety improvements needed potentially in that location. My concern is that it's taking time and energy away from other projects we've already identified as priority, like the roundabout at Exchange Street. That comes to mind. The rail, we have the rail bridge project, so I don't know that it will or not, but that is one concern that I have, and I felt a little bit like it was pushing a little bit too hard, but that's just my opinion. So, I don't have to sign it.
Well, I mean, it's coming from all of us. And my one concern was, I think that Wayne identified some safety fixes that would make a significant difference. And certainly the what's it called, the tracking down the middle of the road? Rumble strips. The rumble strips makes a huge difference. And then to plan that in the next time that they address that road and to have that in the planning window, I think that those are some pretty significant efforts on their part to address something that has been around for a very long time, and we finally have gotten it on that window. I don't know as though any amount of pushing is going to get it any faster. That was my one concern. I would at least like to have a caveat that we feel that we'd really like to try and see what your proposal will do for the safety of that area and drive it with that for a while to see, does that, better signage, rumble strips, there's some things that I think would make a difference on that stretch. I don't know, Dan, you've been working with these roads for a long time. Have you read these letters?
Briefly, I guess, rumble strips work, but it's as a warning, caution, that maybe I should pay attention if my wheel crosses the line. But if someone chooses to make a decision, the rumble strip is not gonna matter. And so some of those bumps and hills out on 125, they ought to really go.
So,
Blast them down and take them out, but maybe that's not in their vision.
I think that they said it would be on the next time they were doing that road.
so the rumble strip will be right across the road or just along the median and the shoulders?
Along the center line.
Center line.
Center line, like they did on Route 7.
Yeah, but if they don't hit the rumble strip, they're still gonna be speeding, right?
I'm sorry, what?
If they miss that rumble strip,
They're still going to, they could still.
they're still
speed.
going to go fast.
Yeah.
It's not gonna slow them down.
How about the
mental
rumble
health.
strip that goes across the road itself? They have it to slow down traffic at the entrance of the airports and stuff.
I don't think they can do that on the,
You
we
can't-
ran into that with the,
Tables would be an option, where it's a longer rise rather than a bumper stop sort of.
Mhm.
But that's usually in lower speed areas, 25, 35, 40
We're kind
mile
of
an hour
stuck
maybe
there.
max. I don't think they would do it on a 50 mile an hour road. Ambulance.
we asked on 116, and they wouldn't do it, right?
Emergency vehicle people.
Well, and it seems, in fact, actually, the most recent incident out there that probably was led to a lot of this, none of these would have made a difference, I suspect. It was a inadvertent decision,
Right.
and so there's that. But I concur with Heather's point of view is, obviously that was bad, but we're looking at a potential bad up on Route 7, and I don't want to pull away from that with the.
Where we've also had accidents and safety concerns and loss of life, so,
At Exchange Street.
Mhm.
yeah.
Visibility is, again, one of the issues there.
Mhm.
So,
Does it hurt to send the letter and sign it? Probably, probably not, but.
that was my thought, that, it doesn't hurt to underscore that, it's a problem area for us, and that there have been fatalities, and that we like to keep it on the radar. That's kind of how I saw it, too. I'm not sure that rumble strips are the answer, but I'm glad that we're
No,
paying attention to it.
Well, I think they're not, they're not a solution, because very often you have blind spots and people simply decide that they're going to pass someone where they shouldn't, and, and it is a dangerous road in that respect, that you have blind spots, and, but I'm not sure that this is, I suppose it would help, but to do that.
I suppose it puts us on record as saying this is something that we're concerned with.
Yeah.
And just
Well,
let it be at that for now.
So, at one point, there was the redesign of the hill from Cider Mill west. There was concern about the visibility there. They came in, they took some of that hill off, but in my opinion, it didn't make
no.
a significant difference.
No, didn't take enough.
Yeah,
know,
right,
so
right.
So should we sign the letter? Yes, probably, let's sign it and move forward. I just don't hope that it doesn't derail priority on other projects.
I don't know if you add language about that we respect it and understand that there are other priorities, and see this.
I just reread it again. It's just saying that that
I-
10 years is too long, and,
That's
you
what
know,
I
I
s-
think we probably all would agree with that.
Mhm.
So,
I guess I don't see any harm in it, and it could be advantageous.
pleasure of the board.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to authorize our board chair, Brian Carpenter, to sign the letter to V-Trans Highway Division Chief Wayne Simmons requesting that V-Trans place a high priority on addressing public safety concerns regarding Route 125 at the Middlebury-Cornwall line.
Second.
Any final comments, questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Approval of facilities use agreement with the Patricia A. Hannaford Career Center for use on the Middlebury Recreation Facility as an emergency evacuation shelter.
Very nicely summarized. The Patricia Hannaford Career Center would like to use the Recreation Center as a emergency shelter if needed, and the agreement is outlined in your packet.
Seems straightforward, and what does the high school designate?
I don't know.
Okay, I was just curious. Anyway, it doesn't matter, so I'll move it, that we authorize our town manager, Kathleen, to sign the facilities use agreement with the Career Center for the use of the town rec facility on Creek Road as the emergency evacuation shelter. I guess pending the completion of the Career Center's review.
Second. We'll keep the question mark out of that one.
Okay.
We got it?
Yes.
Any comments, questions? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Dan?
Oh, no.
I think.
Yeah, looks like I'll probably take this one. Okay, and what this will be for is a contract award for the replacement of the track loader for the Department of Public Works. And our requested action will be to endorse the Infrastructure Committee's recommendation to award a contract for the purchase of a Bobcat track loader to Champlain Valley Equipment for a total of cost of $46,634. And as you noted, our chair, Brian Carpenter, has chosen to not be part of the conversation for out of concern of conflict of interest, so we respect that. So Dan?
Sure. So Bill Kernan and his staff developed specifications for a new track loader for use for several departments. And so they went out and got bids. The low bidder that met specifications was from Champlain Equipment. It's a Model T 550 track loader by Bobcat. And the tractor itself cost was $40,197.16. Bill's also requesting a Harley rake to be used mostly by the rec department and highway department. And so water and wastewater departments would not participate in that cost. So in your board packet, there were some percentages of use. And so with Bill, we've recalculated the percentage that would be charged to each department, and it's this way. Wastewater would pay 43%, highway would pay 31%, recreation would pay 17%, and water department would pay 9%. But that's kind of behind the scenes of where we're allocate the expenses. But for now, we're asking the board to approve Champlain Valley's equipment's bid of $46,634.40.
I'll make a motion to award a contract for the purchase of a Bobcat track loader to Champlain Valley Equipment for a total cost of $46,634. Can I amend that? Track loader and Harley rake.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes.
And that second's okay with you, Victor? Okay, so the motion's been made by Heather and seconded by Victor. Any further discussion on this issue? Okay, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the ayes have it with 6 and 1 abstention.
Okay, next is Select Board recommendation on the water system improvement funding priorities. Dan, you want to walk us through that?
Sure. As you know, the town conducted a a hydraulic study of the water system over the past year. Dufresne Group was the engineering firm we selected to do that. One of their summaries from that report was to help us guide through the process of selecting some water main areas for replacement. And so, along with them and Infrastructure Committee, we've developed 3 sites or areas that would be on the top of the list. One is Route 7, Katy Road, Court Street. Water main basically starts at Katy Road and Lower Foot Street, and then comes to Route 7 and goes north, about across from Public Works Department. The second one is Court Street and Washington Street. That is basically from Mary Hogan south on the west side of Court Street, and then down Washington Street, past Butt-Off Drive, heading towards Five Corners. The third one was Exchange Street. Basically starts about where Catamount Park is, where some of the doctor's offices are in there, and goes north towards Route 7, and then in Pond Lane towards like DNF excavating is back in that area. So those were the three main areas. We've had a lot of discussion about the cost of that and how we're going to handle that. So the Infrastructure Committee has provided a motion for the board to consider, and that is up on the screen, hopefully. To ask the Select Board to consider or to do some research along with staff to develop some funding options on how we might address the needs for water main improvements in the system. Those 3 projects would total about $6.8 million. The cost of the bond would be significant. I have concerns that if you bond too much, you will lose flexibility to address other issues as they come along. That's a discussion we can have maybe in a little more detail later on. But for now, we're just asking, Infrastructure Committee is asking the board to take some time and do some research on other funding sources and options. So that's the presentation.
And that's what that motion is saying, is that we agree with the priorities, and for us to make it a priority to look at funding
Yes.
mechanisms.
Yes.
The priorities are in the order is presented, or?
It depends on who you ask. I mean, the business community out on Exchange Street would say that.
Yeah.
Other people on the south side would say that. The middle one, Court Street, we've got a paving project by V-Trans coming in 2021. We really should get at that before that happens, otherwise we'll be, might be ripping the road up soon afterwards.
In your expert opinion, which one should we have?
There's not a clear way to differentiate the priority in those 3 projects. Like Dan just said, they all have their,
Merits.
Yeah, it really comes down to, let's take a look at how we might fund long-term, investments in the water system. Mm-hmm. And make sure we don't sell ourselves too short by going for an immediate solution. Well, we should look at long-term funding.
Yeah, I understand that that's one thing, but I think we're still left with wrestling what the priority is, for these projects, and that is a dilemma. And I guess the wisdom of the Infrastructure Committee hopefully can guide us. I read the notes, so I saw what the pros and cons were for each one, and I guess we'll just continue to stay posted by you. I mean, there could be discussion at town meeting on this, because we have it, on the agenda, and we can see what residents, voters have to say.
so I'll make a motion.
Please.
I move that the select board prioritize funding construction of the top 3 projects identified by the 2018 water system hydraulic study. Route 7 Katy Road, Court Street and Washington Street, Exchange Street, Manelli Road, and Pond Lane. And recognizing the ongoing need for water, wastewater, highway, and stormwater infrastructure projects, and the burden of funding these projects that will place on taxpayers and utility ratepayers. I further move that the board direct town staff to formulate an integrated, sustainable, long-term plan to finance infrastructure improvements.
Moved and seconded. Comments? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Dan, next recommendation?
Yes, the next item is a recommendation to accept our statements of qualifications from firms that responded to our request for qualification-based services for a variety of talents and firms: architectural, civil engineering, project development, and construction management services. So increasingly, the grants or loan programs from the state, through the state, a lot of that is federal money. Actually, it comes out of this right pocket and hopefully comes in the left pocket at some point. But the feds are basically guiding the state and saying, you should be encouraging this qualification-based services process. And that is where, we went out and I developed a request for these services from a variety of types of businesses that we might use in the future for some of these programs and projects. And so the reason behind that is you get a list of companies, you keep the list, which Kathleen will put on the screen shortly, but it's a matrix that you have in your packet. And in the future, anytime in the future, we can choose one of these businesses if it fits one of our projects well. So you don't have to take low bidder. I think there might have been concerns over the years that low bidder may not be the best solution. I'm not saying that was an issue here, but I think, nationwide, for some reason, that's how things are shaken out. They want towns and states to have flexibility on who they choose for their professional services. So I sent out a request for statements of qualifications. We got 26, I believe it was, back. And just briefly, and these are all done by alphabetical. There is no rhyme or reason other than that. The boxes that are checked are those some of the services that these companies will provide. They had to provide us in part of the proposal. I want to be considered for stormwater or geotechnical. It wasn't my interpretation. They had to provide that. So this list is good for 3 years with an option for an additional 2. All the businesses had to supply their rates for their staff that might work on any of the projects for us. And so how it works is we have a project coming up, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And we choose one of these firms, and then we negotiate with them what their costs would be, their fees would be for them to develop a project for us. So for right now, what I'm requesting is the board to adopt this list of businesses so we can move forward with our qualification-based services needs.
Have we done this before?
We have not.
This is the first time.
Bravo.
No, but it's actually very common, as Dan mentioned, in federal contracting. It's often referred to as indefinite quantities contracts, and it's really a value for money. So what they're doing is exactly what you're saying, is you're getting people who are qualified to do the work, rather than have to take a chance that the person who is bidding is qualified. They're known entities. It's in their interest to do a good job, to be fair, otherwise you get bounced off the list. So it's actually a really good way to do it, and especially if it's need for something to happen in the short term, you can move it very quickly. So it's a very logical way and makes sense.
I'll make a motion to authorize staff, I'm on the wrong one, sorry. I jumped ahead. I'll make a motion to accept the statements of qualifications from all firms responding to the town's request for statements of qualifications for engineering, architectural, project development, and construction management services.
Second.
Comments? Question? Comment?
In the advertisement that was sent out to the people who responded, construction management wasn't listed as one of the topics. I see it was added summary, and I just wonder how firms that weren't called upon to address that issue would feel having this category added.
Let me see if I have the thing in front of it.
Didn't you tell us the other day in infrastructure that some of those firms have identified it, so you had added it? Or
Yeah,
at the end of- I can't remember exactly what you said the other day.
Yeah. I did specifically ask for construction management I didn't envision a company that would just do that. But when I advertised this on the Vermont Business to Business Directory, those companies decided to send in their qualification because one, they probably figured I don't want to be left out in case I might qualify for something. So they submitted. So a lot of these companies are engineering firms, and they do what we kind of call construction management or construction inspection. In other words, we do an engineering project and they inspect the contractor's work. I did not check their boxes for them because it would not show that these three companies that offer construction management type services, they would be confused in the list. So I decided to list those for construction management that sent specifically requested to have us consider them on their own and not combine them with an engineering firm or an architectural firm that also does construction management. There's a little bit of splitting hairs on what you call construction management. But these three are those that just would help us manage a project like the police department's energy efficiency project. So, no, I did not specifically request construction management, but they submitted, so.
If the other ones are not listed on that and we want to have a construction manager, does that keep us from hiring him for that because we haven't approved them on that list?
You mean engineering firms that might offer?
Right.
Not at all. Not at all. Because that's, having them that do construction, it's kind of it's a term that is used loosely. Some companies will say, yeah, we offer construction management, but engineering companies say, yeah, we offer construction management. But they look at it from an inspection process of work by a contractor. These people who sent in for, I want to be considered for construction management, they are, I got to tell specifically, like Harris & Harris. They manage projects for us. That is what these three companies do specifically.
Okay.
So I wanted to highlight that they have those talents and not mix them up with engineering firms.
As opposed to an inspector.
Right.
Okay.
And that was the wording I was trying to find from what you talked about in the meeting infrastructure the other day.
Yeah.
Was engineering firms are typically inspecting work that's being done versus, and a good example is the Harris Police Department project.
Right.
As a example of what
Full-fledged
construction-
management.
Yeah.
Yeah.
what construction
Okay.
management.
Understand the difference.
Yeah, and part of the big picture is, we'll talk about this in a little bit, if we get a project identified, and it's obviously it's the rail platform and parking lot, we get that project identified, and then a grant process, a program comes up, and we want to move towards that. Once we've selected someone from this list that you have approved, we are good to go through the grant process and don't have to go backpedal and go out for another bid process for a consultant.
Yeah.
So if something happens midstream and we've used someone from this list, we're good. Don't have to do it over. So that's one reason why I included those people that submitted that weren't specifically requested
Yeah.
information about, so.
Okay. Any other questions? So we have a motion to accept the statement of qualifications. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, and then this, are we going to use that then on this next one?
We are. So now that we've done that, there's a few projects here we can get moving on. One is the Colonial Drive infrastructure improvements. There's a project which I'll discuss very briefly and try to identify the colors on the map for you. But Colonial Drive is this little loop behind Co-op Insurance. This is Washington Street, it's bound. Peterson Terrace, and this is Gambrill Court. So this project is, green is sanitary sewer replacement. We had some significant infiltration in that section. Stormwater on this leg and this leg. Significant icing problems almost every winter the highway department has to deal with. There's a culvert here that freezes up, the ditches freeze up, and it just costs a lot of time and effort trying to dig the ice off the street. The blue line is to complete a loop of the water main. There's a water main that goes around here and stops. There's an old 2-inch main that goes here and stops. And we want to replace this with updated water main pipe size. The colors are ratings on road condition. Red is worst in the system. This is a number 2, this is a 3, this is a 4. We're going to try to, if costs work out for us, we'll try to do recycle and pave all of these at the same time for economies of scale. You have equipment, a paver. Let's do those while that equipment is in the neighborhood, if the costs work out. So staff, which was Bill Kernan, myself, Willie Glenn, and Bob Wells, met about this project. The sanitary work was identified with Aldridge & Elliott engineering firm. They did some work with Bob on flow metering and manholes. They found some infiltration issues. So we came to consensus that we would recommend Green Mountain Engineering to the Infrastructure Committee and the board to start a negotiation for a contract to do engineering for this project. So that's the first project to consider for tonight.
Well, walk us through the process, so this new process. So if we support this, we move this motion and support it.
Mm-hmm.
You will go and work with Green Mountain Engineering.
Yeah.
Discuss, lay out everything that's expected. They'll come back with a bid for, or a price for that.
Right.
Now, do you then bring that back to us for approval of the price?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so it just changes the way we do a bid. It's more of a negotiation from an approved registered contractor with us.
Right. And so this negotiation process involves them sitting down with us. We dig out all our maps. We walk the site. We are 100% sure everybody's on the same page, what we want designed. And then we sit down. Well, hopefully we're 100% right on the same page. But we know what we want. They know what we want.
Yeah.
And then we have their rates of their staff, and we can go through use the same categories that we have done in the past: design engineering, a bid phase, permitting, construction services. I just talked about a little bit ago, and they can put a dollar amount on that.
Yeah.
And
So then does it allow you to say, well, this is what we've got in the budget, what can we do, and then give us a contract to do what we can do, so we can actually, it's not an all or nothing, accept the bid or not. You could then tailor the negotiation to say you can only do 2 of the 3 pavings that you want to do because it doesn't fit in the budget. Does it allow you to negotiate that?
Well, you would go in through the design process as part of that, several of those categories that make a whole project.
Right.
Through the design process, you would say, we want to do those 3 streets. They're going to do some measurements and say, here's our cost estimate. One of the things that we want out of this is an engineer's opinion of cost. So we know before we go to a bid process, a bid process with a contractor, can we afford that?
I don't know if you can say, I mean, you could probably get into negotiation with them, say, well, should we design that, or should we design that also? Yeah, you might be able to do that.
I just wonder if it can help save some money on design. If you can't afford it, why design it?
Right.
You know, I'm just trying to understand all the process, because it's going to be new.
Right, right.
Okay.
We don't have to accept what they propose.
Right.
You know.
I understand that.
We could
yeah.
choose to.
Just wondering if we can
Negotiate with someone else,
negotiate,
although
yeah.
I don't think we should probably do that, you know. Oh, we don't like your price. And
Yeah,
we
that's a
like,
bad
oh, I don't like
precedent.
your price, and we'll do the next one.
That's what you do with
But-
doctors, I don't like your diagnosis.
Right.
But,
Okay.
we do typically, you know, approve just the design portion, so we know where we are on cost before we do the other parts of the engineering anyway, so that's pretty typical even with the bidding process.
Right, right.
And we know ahead of time what their rates are, so that was my big concern, was that we were gonna start paying more for engineering because we weren't bidding it out, but we have a sense of what their numbers are, and
Okay.
I think we can.
And we have a little history with, you know, projects and how long it takes to develop something, the design process. You know,
Yeah.
we've done Charles Avenue, Stewart Lane. We have numerous projects with them, actually, as somewhat of a guideline. But early on, we would try to crunch some numbers, and I've already kind of started that, where this shakes out dollar-wise. There's things, will not be built this year. It'll be just design this year.
Yeah.
And then we'll come back to this probably in November, December of next year, to see where the funds are, whether it's a go or it's a wait. But at least this gets it in design process to see what our costs are going to be.
Okay. Heather, would you care to make a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion to authorize staff to begin contract negotiations with Green Mountain Engineering for the design of the Colonial Drive Infrastructure Improvement Project.
Second.
Questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
All right. Number 2 is Middle Seymour Street Storm Sewer and Sanitary Sewer Cross Connection Project. And also number 3, Middle Seymour Commuter Rail Platform design, basically parking lot, sidewalks, and a few other amenities. So this project up on the screen is the entrance to Marble Works. Coming from the north, you go around the S-curve, and Marble Works is down here. What we've discovered is that the white lines are storm sewer, open basin, along with the road runoff down this side of the street, goes into the yard or into a storm manhole and goes right into the sanitary sewer. And so we need to get that out of there. This area is ponding. I've heard from the neighbors. If there's some way to solve that issue along with this, we'll take a look at it. Green is existing sanitary, white is existing storm sewer. Orange is a small portion of the storm sewer that goes underneath the railroad tracks. The tunnel ends approximately right here, and the railroad project is going to take some of this storm water and head down towards Seymour Street on its way to Otter Creek. So what we would need to do is design a new storm sewer from this point to pick up the yard, this discharge from this culvert, and get around and discharge into this existing storm sewer. That's that project. If I can jump to the rail platform, this is a concept from VHB. Our portion, the town's portion of this would be the non-platform. In other words, the parking lot, approach sidewalks, crosswalk. There is already existing sidewalk here. Benches, lighting, anything else that we might have to have for that. So we've kind of been waiting to see where we shook out with the railroad project to move the Middle Seymour Street storm sewer along. And then the rail platform came up, and we had a meeting a week or so ago, and it was kind of like, you know, we should really have that one engineer
develop specifications for both, along with try to get one contractor to do both projects. They're there, one mobilization, try to save some money and not have another engineering firm, you know, working a couple hundred feet from another one and try to get it done at the same time. So, again, we talked about this with staff and would like to recommend to you to use Otter Creek Engineering for these two projects. We've worked with them in the past. They have pretty good staff for some stormwater creativity issues. And so it's one of the things that why we would like to use them for this project. So that's why we are suggesting them.
So I'd like to make a motion to authorize staff to begin contract negotiations with Otter Creek Engineering for the design of the combined Middle Seymour storm sewer and sanitary sewer cross-connection and Middle Seymour Street commuter rail platform project.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions, comments? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
The next one is the maintenance agreement for the East Middlebury Flood Resiliency Project. The state's requesting actually FEMA requires a town to sign a maintenance agreement for maintaining the Middlebury River in East Middlebury area. Really what's driving this is through this whole flood process is how is the state or FEMA or whatever going to allow the towns to clean out the rivers when something happens? That was the initial kind of conundrum of the whole thing. Nobody wants to let anybody in the river. Well, you know, if you can't clean out the rivers once in a while, then you're going to be as we've always been. And so there's probably been some give and take behind the scenes, and I think A&R now feels comfortable to allow communities to clean out rivers once they hit certain levels, certain predetermined levels of debris, and I think everybody's okay with that. So you go through all the other process and FEMA's involvement and FEMA, you know, grants and so on and so forth. And what comes down to it is, all right, we all agree that it's okay for you to do, but we need a maintenance agreement that says that if we give you the funds, you're going to do it. And so that's what this is, that we need to have sign on and say, yep, we're going to be a partner in this. You'll let us clean them out when we need to? Yep. Okay, we'll do it. So that's the.
So I'll move that we authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign the maintenance agreement for the East Middlebury Flood Resiliency Project pending completion of the legal review.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, thanks, Dan.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Next is Select Board Resolution for Downtown Transportation Fund Grant Application for Design and Construction of the town's portion of the Middle Seymour Street commuter rail project, commuter rail platform, including a commitment to a 50% local match.
Okay, you have in your pocket, the proposed resolution for the Downtown Transportation Fund. This is an opportunity to get up to 50% of the construction costs or $100,000, whichever is more. So we're looking at the rail platform, parking lot, lighting, benches, signs, being in the order of magnitude of $217,000. So we would be applying for the maximum for this grant source.
I'll move it, that we sign the resolution for the Downtown Transportation Fund grant for an application to fund the town's portion of the Amtrak and commuter rail platform project, and also approve a local match commitment of 50% of the town's finalized grant application funding request.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Again, questions, comments? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Preparation for town meeting.
Okay, so I did a draft agenda for town meeting, which is in your packet. Just want to note a couple of things we did to streamline the presentation. One was to have the annual Bob Collins Award presented at a recreation event, so that will not be presented at town meeting this year. And also to streamline the Health and Human Services presentations as we did last year, and I'll do a brief summary of those. One thing that folks were asking for was for a greater opportunity to talk about the Cross Street Bridge Fund. So we had moved up that article from Article 5 last year to Article 2. So you'll be doing that right at the top of the evening, and setting the stage for then the equipment fund and then the budget discussion. Also, in response to comments received in 2017 when the high school hosted the town meeting, special attention is being paid to the availability of and placement of microphones for use by audience members. 2 stationary microphones will be placed in the aisles, and 2 floating wireless microphones will be available this year. Ann Webster is listing the aid of several justices of the peace to act as microphone runners, and a note has been written into the meeting agenda requesting the moderator to make a general announcement about microphone procedures at the start of the meeting. Before I pass the floor over to Laura for the town meeting floor, I'll just, for the town meeting poll, just mention that there is an update on Article 7, the financing for the Memorial Sports Center improvements. Just to clarify that the intent is to issue a 5-year note with the balloon payment at the end and refinance that for a term of 15 years as desired by the Memorial Sports Center, the Friends of Middlebury Hockey.
And they'll have somebody from the floor that will make a motion for the, okay.
Jim Douglas suggested that I prepare a slide with the revised motion as well, so I'll do that.
So before town meeting, will people have the opportunity to visit in the cafeteria, Anne? And if they wanted to display, they could? Like, there'll be different groups that might be displaying?
Display, and I think the Mums organization still wants to do food.
Mums or Mesa?
Mesa.
Okay, so there'll be refreshments if people arrive early, and just wanted to note that, so, because I know that people may be looking for that opportunity, and I'm glad that we'll be able to provide that again.
Yeah, so check-in normally starts about 6:15, so even if people wanted to arrive by 6 or whatever.
And mill around and visit with one another, you could. Mhm.
Refreshments.
And if you want to find the town survey, you could, and you could take it home and you can bring it back with you if you wanted to. So a copy of the town meeting poll is in our packet, and you also have a copy here, and it is available now for early voting for people to complete. And you'll see that we're trying to ask people how they feel about Middlebury's friendliness and just general satisfaction with our services. We're also asking if they'd like to redesignate some parking for other use, so you'll see that you'll have an opportunity to respond to a few statements related to that. So we're asking people if they would agree or disagree with redesignating some parking immediately behind the town office in Ilsley for 15-minute parking during business hours, or to redesignate one of those spots behind the town office in Ilsley for perhaps an electric vehicle parking spot with a quick charger. So just in anticipation of what the future needs could be and to keep things turning over. So we're also anticipating the arrival of e-bike scooters, so we're asking how you feel about where those park So those are some of the things to look for on the survey. And of course, you can give us some general comments too. There's space for you to provide that as well. So we hope you'll complete the survey. We appreciate the comments from last year, and it helped inform this year.
Okay, in closing, I'll be working on the PowerPoint presentation for town meeting this week and hope to get it out to board members early next week. And I'm happy to incorporate any comments you may have into it.
Might as well jump into year-to-date budget reports then.
I was thinking, since we have some folks that
Do
are
that?
traveling.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Always thoughtful. So, yeah, Mark and John, if you want to come forward. V-Trans Project Manager John Griffin and Ricky VP Construction, Mark
Do you wanna-
Alexander are here to talk to us about consideration for closure of Merchants Row earlier to support the construction cycle, and so we'll have their presentation. Good evening, John.
Jonathan Griffin, Vermont Agency of Transportation, project manager. Here with Mark Alexander from Kubricki, Vice President of Construction. And wanted to let Mark speak on behalf of what we're asking for today, since he's the most knowledgeable of it, and I'm just going to be here to run the computer.
Okay. So, as most of you are aware, it's kind of been a long process here with the bridge and tunnel project. And over the last couple of years, we're getting towards final plans. We're currently at 90% right now. We have a lot more detail than we had when we first started, and the support excavation design is right around 40 to 50% complete at this time. And we're running into some issues with our schedule. So right now we're up against some engineering problems on Merchant Row. So today we're here to ask if we would be able to close Merchants Row a few weeks in advance of the main outage to allow for removal of the temporary bridge. This all surrounds the fact that we can install some tiebacks, which are supports for the support excavation wall, that we can't access because they currently sit underneath the bridge. Okay, so we've spent a lot of work with our team over the last few months developing really an hourly schedule for the job. And right now, without getting a jump on that, we are not showing on paper that we can hit the 10-week schedule. So the thought process is, if we can get in and pull the bridge out and advance some work in this area to get the tiebacks installed, it'll give us a really good chance of success during the 10-week outage, which I think is going to benefit everyone in the long run, including the town. It's certainly going to, involve some impacts. What I'm kind of showing here is, in order to take the bridge out, we'll have to have a crane. We'll pick the bridge up and swing it in front of what was the old diner here for disassembly. That's the worst possible impact, when the bridge itself is actually coming out. After that, our footprint shrinks dramatically. The bridge gets out of the way. We have to salvage. The other issue that's kind of come up here is we have to salvage ashlar blocks in that area for future use by the town and for the landscaping, which is kind of a delicate operation to get those loaded out safely in one piece. So these are just some of the things that have added some time that we had not originally anticipated, just some added details and scope of work from what we originally anticipated. We would certainly be looking to meet with the affected businesses and try to, work together with them to minimize any impacts or additional impacts that would be caused by this, to work around their schedules. And, once the bridge was out of the way and the first few rows of blocks were off the top, we should be able to move, our excavator here down onto the bottom and work from the bottom. We will have to load the blocks up onto a truck to haul them out, but we can pull half of our operation into the railroad corridor, so that we're not out in front of a business, you know, on the tel block side. We can load the blocks on a trailer on the other side. You know, we recognize that this is an ask, you know, with the 10 weeks coming on its heels, but we've basically been able to engineer every other scenario on the job to get all the support excavation in, you know, before the outage, except for this little piece right here, and we're pretty much out of ideas other than to get those tiebacks installed, you know, through taking the bridge down a few weeks early. We're thinking right now, if we were able to come in on the 4th of May, which is a Monday, it's the 4th, in about a 3-week period, we know you have graduation coming, 3rd week in May, you know, we get our work done and get out of the way for graduation, and you know, not have any presence, you know, while the graduation crowd is in town and the festivities are going on, and then come back. We have a few more days there between that and the start of the outage. We should be able to get the support excavation installed and the tiebacks. Just so when you understand what I'm saying with the tieback, we're building a wall, a temporary wall, and it's, for lack of a better word, an anchor that holds the wall from tipping over. So and they are a little slow going in. You have to grout them in. You have to wait for cure. So that's why we're looking to get that out of the 10-week closure. You know, the whole premise of the closure all along, the whole team's been striving to get all of the supportive excavation in before the start of the 10 weeks, so that we can maximize the chances of success for getting the roads open on time and you know, keeping that impact as expected. So.
I would like to point out that we did install the mini piles already under the bridge, right, in advance, in anticipation of this. So it wasn't an oversight. Now that the design details and the final elevations for the rail corridor are known, we can't make those mini piles work without also then tying them back. So we did install what we anticipated would be required in advance, but it's not enough. So there's this additional requirement of the tiebacks, which can't be installed with the temporary bridge in place.
Question, please.
So how, once you've removed the bridge and the top few levels of the ashlar blocks, will we be able to access the parking in that area? Like, so,
Good. Yeah, so I think when we're working up top here, there's actually, the access to the back of the building will switch onto the temporary access road for the people that are getting to the back of the building. There's really not a park. I know people are parking there, but there's probably one parking spot that we would interrupt in the beginning of the operation on this side, which is adjacent to this little door area right there. On the other side, we have a few, you know, several parking spots right here that will be impacted by the bridge. Once the bridge was out, we would basically have a truck here, sitting here, and we'd be loading blocks onto a truck. So right now, there's no parking here. That's actually the ramp for the bridge coming off. The parking lines that you see on there are left over from the original configuration. So we're talking about, you know, one parking spot over here for a period of time, and then, you know, probably a few parking spots in this area until the bridge is out of the way. And I think we'll be shrunk back down where we're not impacting more than 1 or 2 spots. We could reconfigure traffic over here to come one way in and one way out here, so people could access, you know, parking in this area, you know, after the bridge is out.
so people are still gonna be able to get to the businesses?
Yes,
And-
absolutely, yeah.
It's not,
We would propose like to coordinate with the tel block on, you know, we could, you know, different options out there. We could work normal day hours. If they want us in there at night, we could work at night. We'll be totally flexible with what works for the business owners. And
You did mention 24/7
we could
potentially
go
for.
24/7 on the bridge portion, just to expedite how fast the bridge is gone and out of the way, so that we shrink our footprint. But whatever we need to do to partner with the businesses there to accomplish the goal.
So what happens to Town Hall Theater during that time?
Shouldn't be, we would obviously have to coordinate where the bridge is sitting, so it doesn't interrupt any of their events, which I think, Jim, are typically Thursday through Saturday, right? we'll have to coordinate that so we're not interrupting them.
Ricky's aware of the Vermont Walk Bike Summit on the 8th, Laura. So we talked about how to work around.
It's going to be right there, yeah.
It's right there, in town here, but they're aware of that. That's a kind of, one-on-one conversation we have with the summit folks to make sure that could be held successfully and they could do their thing too.
So how would people walk from there to Main Street?
Through the Village Green.
Right. Through the green.
Like at the
Okay.
temporary closure also, we had it closed
Yeah.
off. Okay,
Right.
that would have been my question too.
So you can come down and park, as Mark talked about, if we restructure the flow of traffic, and then the pedestrian access would have to be across the Village Green.
Mud season will be done by then,
Hopefully.
hopefully.
And how much extra time you said for this?
I think it's about 3 weeks. You know, we think if we started on about May 4th, we could be done before graduation. So,
The Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, it's actually like almost 3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks.
And when you say done, you mean that through traffic can go through there?
well, the bridge will be gone at that point. Done meaning we'll have the SOE installed.
Okay.
We won't be working there by the time graduation comes. The bridge will be out, obviously, but
Okay.
but we won't be sitting up in the street and impacting
Right.
anything in terms of, line of sight for the businesses.
So the entire Merchant Row will be closed, or just the bridge portion will be closed for
When-
traffic?
When we leave, for
On May-
graduation, you mean, or?
Yeah.
No, I'm just, every day when you take
Merchants
that-
Row, traffic will be able to come in here and park and go back out, and traffic will be able to come in here and park and go back out.
Okay, so the entire Merchant Row is not going to be closed?
It's just not a
Just
through
You
street.
won't be able to go through all the way.
Yeah,
For the 13-week period?
but to have that.
For 13
The entire 13 weeks?
Yes.
Correct.
For 3 weeks and then the 10 weeks.
And then the 10 weeks, okay.
The 10 weeks are going to be different because there'll be a much larger footprint and those,
Okay.
you won't have any access to.
Yeah, that's a full shutdown.
Okay.
Main Street and everything will be closed off during the 10-week period.
Okay.
This is just, the 3 weeks is just the accomplish getting the bridge out and install the tiebacks and lagging that we need to put in directly underneath the bridge.
And we'll be coordinating for them to come in and give us a full brief and understanding of what those impacts and how that looks and time, to kind of do a time phase for us so we can kind of understand and work with events and neighbors together to get the word out and make sure they all understand, so. Nick?
Mark and John, appreciate you coming forward with this, and I want to preface by saying the work you did this year was phenomenal. I mean, it was excellent. I think, things went really well. I'm hearing from the people in the community of the professionalism they saw, so there's a lot of trust to do this well. The basic objective has right along been a 10-week closure for the downtown. That's the critical point, and to have this largely done by September. So you're the professionals on this. You build, we don't. You've obviously looked at this carefully, and if this is what you say you have to do, then this is what we have to do. And I don't think there's any objection to that. So I'm fully supportive of it and trust that the work will go well in it. So, absolutely.
Other questions?
And we have not yet spoken with the business owners, Jim?
No.
Not yet, okay,
The first stop was to come to Selectboard.
okay. So that you can say, this is what's happening.
And we'll meet with the town, all the other impacted businesses.
I appreciate you continuing to work the solution on this and figuring out how you can quickly shrink that footprint to sustain parking to the maximum extent possible and work from the rail bed where possible. That's already morphed a little bit since the first time you broached this subject. And so obviously you'll continue to work that and give us the best solution you can.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate you already coming up with some solutions just in the last week or so.
I trust the other issue, it's beyond Middlebury, but I trust the other issue that's going on schedule is the requirements for rerouting the rail, the trains. because there were some upgrades that were required with track and things over at further parts of the state, so I trust that's moving forward.
Correct. Everything's moving forward, and I'm optimistic that everything's moving forward on time, on schedule, and hopefully on budget. Mark?
Give me the elbow.
It's always
I do think, John, you told me we're down to just one right-of-way agreement
There's
left?
3 parcels left.
3 parcels
3
left?
parcels left, and we're still working in negotiations with those 3 parcels. So hopefully we'll be able to come to agreement with those owners. Those are critical activities for us.
Yeah.
But we've got all of our staff working on it, and I'm very optimistic that we'll be successful.
Makes sense.
Any other questions? Pleasure of the board?
I'd make a motion to endorse Kubricki's request to close Merchants Road to through traffic in advance of the planned closure in summer 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any final comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, keep us informed, as you've been doing, and we
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So just excellent work.
Thank you.
We look forward to having you in here to do the full, we don't want to divert you from getting all these final plans done, but once everything's done, we'd like an update from the select board.
Yeah, we're looking
We're shooting for April. I think it's on the calendar,
April 9th.
April 9th.
Right, 2 days before my son's due date.
Oh, boy. Yeah, you may not be with us, John.
Yeah, I might have to send somebody in my place.
Not your wife, though.
Thank you.
Thank you for picking that up.
I'm sure they wanted to stay for my budget report. Anyway, just a couple of highlights of the budget. At this point, we're 67% of the way through our budget, 58% of the way through the fiscal year. But that is due to a number of prepaid expenses, mostly bond expenses that we have paid earlier in the year. Overall, all of the departments are on track. Chief Tom Hanley gave you a nice detailed report of the status of his budget, and anticipating that at this point, unless any unforeseen circumstances come up, he will finish right on target. In other action in the Public Works Department, I want to give you a few highlights of that. Our salt budget at January 31st showed expenditures of $137,815 versus a $130,000 budget. Last year at January 31st, we were at $131,000 versus a $130,000 budget. Bill did want to note that while we were over budget last year, we went into this fiscal year with significant salt in storage. We will be depleted at the end of this fiscal year and over budget. So that also sets the stage for next year's budget performance. Highway overtime, we are at $22,056 as of January 31st versus a budget of $30,000, so still under budget. Last year at January 31st, we were at $19,000 on a budget of $25,000, so we had bumped up highway overtime a little bit in this current year budget. On the equipment fund, we have spent $65,600 on parts versus a $40,000 budget, so we're well over budget there. That compares to $41,000 last year on a $39,000 budget. For FY20, we have bumped the equipment parts budget to $50,000 to address some of that overage. I guess, again, as Bill Kernan has told us, we do have an aging fleet, and this is a direct result of that, is the overexpense in the equipment fund. Water maintenance of mains, we have spent $83,839 as of January 1st, January 31st, versus a budget of $70,000. So we're already over budget due to some water breaks there. That compares to a budget of $40,000 last year with expenses of $35,000, $300 year to date. So sorry for all of that bad news in one breath, but that's where we are at this point.
Any questions for Kathleen on the budget?
She said it.
Yeah. What was it that they said they'd spent $5 million in 6 hours on salting the roads when we were over Beaton? Oh, my God, that last big ice storm, I think the state said they spent $5 million in 6 hours.
Wow.
On salt.
Okay. So for the first time in many years, we have an audit report for the previous fiscal year going into town meeting. Jackie Sullivan, our town treasurer and accounting services manager, did a very nice executive summary showing the results of our last fiscal year, which were by and large positive. There were several findings having to do with journal entries and grant receivables. As you know, we are proposing a new position in the accounting office to address some of these deficiencies outlined in the audit report. And that's all I have.
Any questions?
Report being available?
Yep. Mm-hmm. We won't have a lot of copies to distribute, but certainly available upon request, and we can post it on the town's website. There's no proprietary information in there.
So if there's no questions on the audit, we'll go to approval of the check warrants.
Sure, and I'm doing both of these today, right? All right, I would motion to approve total expenditures in the amount of $411,824.90, of which $302,139.46 goes to accounts payable, $109,685.44 for payroll for the pay period of January 23rd, 2019 through February 12th, 2019.
Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
And then I would also motion to approve total expenditures in the amount of $269,966.37, of which $166,975.35 is for accounts payable, and $102,991.02 is for payroll for the pay period of February 13th, 2019 through February 19th, 2019.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, Kathleen, back at you.
Yes, I have a large town manager's report tonight. I do want to read some of this because people have been asking about the 2019 reappraisal schedule. There's a full update on the reappraisal schedule in your packet. A change of appraisal booklet, including a comparison of old property values to new property values, will be sent by mail to all property owners in early June, and pre-grievance meetings and informal opportunity for property owners to ask questions about their property assessment will be held in mid to late June, with formal grievance hearings held thereafter. To accommodate the grievance schedule and to allow for adequate time to prepare tax bills, voters will be asked to approve a change in the due dates for tax payments to two payments, one on October 15th and one on March 15th, 2020. And that will be at town meeting. Presentation of the results of the library focus groups, the Tell Me Tour at the Ilsley Public Library Community Room next Monday, the 25th at 5:30, and next Wednesday, the 27th at 12:30 p.m. The Tell Me Tour was designed to gather information about Middlebury residents' values, goals, and aspirations. This information will be used to ensure the direction and goals of the library are in alignment with the community's needs. These meetings will be an opportunity to learn about the information gathered during the Tell Me Tour and participate in the ongoing conversation about Ilsley's resources, services, and future directions. The Better Connections grant was submitted. The town's application for the Better Connections funding to develop a downtown master plan was submitted on January 31st, 2019. The application outlines the process, timelines, and anticipated deliverables for the projects. Kudos to Director of Planning and Zoning Jen Murray for preparing a comprehensive and professional package, which included numerous letters of support from the community. Breakfast with the Governor in Middlebury on March 18th at the American Legion. Join Governor Phil Scott for Breakfast with the Governor on Monday, March 18th at the American Legion, 49 Wilson Road in Middlebury from 7 a.m. to 8:45 a.m. This is one of a series of legislative breakfasts to be held around the county throughout the spring. The full schedule is included in your packet. The Vermont League of Cities and Towns proposes a pilot program for municipal self-governments. VLCT is proposing a pilot program for municipal self-governments in the 2019 legislative session. The proposal is based on a successful experience in West Virginia where cities and towns were authorized to apply to a board to be a self-governing body. An outline of self-governance and an article on self-governance are included in your packet. Spring Select Board Institute is coming up on March 30th. Please let me know if you'd like to attend. This year it's in Rutland, so an easier trip than in previous years. And in your packet, you'll see an American Legion proclamation, Middlebury American Legion Post 27. Member Tom Scanlon has asked the board to consider signing a proclamation recognizing the Legion's centennial birthday on March 10th, 2019. And it's in your packet, and if the board is amenable, that motion would be in order.
Pleasure of the board on that?
Motion to sign the Select Board proclamation recognizing and congratulating Middlebury American Legion Post 27 for its many contributions to the community on the occasion of centennial birthday of the American Legion on March 10th, 2019.
Second?
Questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? I will comment that Legion gives a lot of money out to organizations within the community, so.
Including our $2,500 we received for the New Year's Eve fireworks.
Nice.
Thank you, Legion.
Board member concerns, Lindsay.
Well, I was in Jamaica recently. It was great. But the one thing that kind of came up that we're talking about now is that the whole country actually just banned single-use plastic bags. And it had gone into effect in January when we were there. And it seemed to be working okay. They were doing the sort of hybrid scheme that I think was outlined in the packet, where you could get a single-use bag at the store that was paper, but you had to pay for it. But everyone seemed to know about it, and about 12 people reminded us to bring our bags when we went to the store, so, but I thought it was interesting. But that was it.
Yeah, I agree.
Jamaica. And it was countrywide. I mean, it seemed like the larger chains were able to implement it faster. It had really only been active for a couple weeks when we were there. It was very, very new. So you could, like, the smaller vendors definitely still had.
Interesting.
bags, but the bigger vendors, they were gone. So,
They probably go through a lot more too, so it's easier
That-
for them to go through it.
they go through a lot more, and I think the biggest challenge that they have is that they're an island, so they don't have anywhere, they don't have the same kind of infrastructure we have, and you see a lot of bags blowing around in the wind.
Yeah.
'Cause they don't have the same kind of, they don't have the quality collection that we have. So I think if we saw them blowing around like you do there, I think
Been
there'd
down
be
to New
that
York City
impact.
lately?
What is it?
Been down to New York City lately?
No.
There are a lot of places where they're blowing around.
Yeah, no,
a
it's
mess.
not nice to see.
Yeah,
For HUD.
even countries like Bangladesh has banned single-use bags.
Really?
Yeah, I just saw in the packet also. So
Yeah.
China has banned single-use plastic, but somehow they're exporting it to us.
Yeah. They make all of ours.
Yeah. I have, there's an organization called One World Library Project in Bristol. They are organizing next week on Thursday, and they have invited me and my wife to speak at that occasion. It's about the pilgrimage I went for last year for Hajj. So this is what this is, Hajj, a spiritual journey. Farhad and Abdul Khan will share our experience at the pilgrimage, and if you need more information, you can call Lawrence Memorial Library at 453-2366 or go to www.oneworldlibraryproject.org, and everybody's welcome to attend.
Laura?
I'm always impressed with the activity in town. Both the Winterfest we just had this weekend, which was fabulous, and I had an opportunity to speak to some newcomers who found us very friendly, and welcoming. So that was
You sound surprised.
good to hear. So they were delighted with that event and our free offerings. So that was great. And I'm also impressed in our packet again with the number of committee reports that we have. I know that everybody's really busy and committed on those committees and commissions. So I'm hopeful that people will continue their participation, and that will attract even more people to rotate onto some of these committees as we move into our next evolution of select board life. So you'll see that on the survey, those are listed in part, and so if you're watching, just remember to look for that so you can appreciate just how much we're doing both at the select board level and the committee level. So I'm watching the Economic Health Committee, and I know that it's been a robust conversation, and we've been given a list of topics to consider, and we're not surprised by that. So I'm just grateful for the work, and I know that we'll continue to refine our goals. I know that we've been talking about water tonight, and I think that does remain a top priority for us, and that it will feed economic health, and we've said this all along, so we know we need to pay attention to our infrastructure, particularly that infrastructure, so I'm glad we're addressing it. And I know that we've been talking about snow and ice and dealing with that, and again, I want to remind us that, we really have a lot of sidewalk to clear here in Middlebury. We have 18 miles of sidewalk to clear, so I know that we're doing our best to balance removal against a budget, and we talked about that budget tonight. So we're trying to keep it safe, but we're also trying to manage to a budget too, so that we don't burden our taxpayers either. So I hope that we just continue to have lessons learned and keep going, with doing the best job we can.
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing.
No, so you can just move right on.
Victor?
I was just thinking, recalling that we're in the midst of a legislative session, and a number of years ago, I don't remember how long it was, legislators could come and more or less bring us up to date with what was going on and allow the select board to have an exchange with them. I'm wondering whether this is not something that we should consider. We had mainly, of course, our town representatives, but I think also our senators. We are, after all, the Shire town. And I'm just wondering whether this might not be something that we should revive. Wasn't a long session, but it enabled our legislators to bring up pending legislation that would affect the towns and also allow the select board to provide some recommendation or suggestions or comments. I think it was of great value. So I would recommend we consider reinstituting this. What we did for the sake of the legislators is those meetings, instead of Tuesday, we met on Monday. So because their session runs from Tuesday to Friday, so it enabled them to, I know my wife used to then head off to Montpelier after it was over, but it was, I think, useful to consider something that we might do.
So our next meeting is it March 25th, or 26th, rather?
Next meeting is March 12th.
12th.
After town meeting.
Why is it not on my calendar? Anyway, so March 12th.
You're not meeting next week.
Right. No, because the school district will have its annual meeting.
Can we see if they would be available for either the 11th or the 25th?
Yeah.
To join us?
Before the first one in April.
Yeah. What's the first one in April? The
The 9th.
The 9th.
8th is the Monday.
So if they would be available on the 8th.
So do you want me to give them this list of choices? Or do you want to aim for one of these in particular?
Is there a preference? Can everybody look at those dates?
I guess my preference is the 8th, and the 25th is, given the recovery from the federal shutdown is likely to be a occupied week for me.
I wasn't paying attention to who are we meeting?
Looking at if there's a Monday in lieu of a Tuesday select board meeting that would work for us, that we could see if it would work for our legislators to join us.
Crossover with our legislators.
Sorry, I should have given a little intro on that.
I blame Victor for this. I was reading his book.
Oh, you philosophical
I
types.
think April 8th will be fine.
And as our board
March
retreat.
25th will be fine, too. I'm good.
We haven't set that yet.
What, haven't we decided yet? Oh, yeah, okay. Mhm.
When does the session end?
Yeah, what,
Is
When-
April's getting towards the end of the session.
right. Are we going to miss our chance to know what's going on and actually do anything about it if we push it that far back?
So why don't we do the second meeting in March? Does that
Or
work?
the first meeting in March?
Well, that's our first one after town meeting, which
That one
is-
might be tough, because that's
It's
right after
hard.
town meeting, after elections, we just, that kind of our organizational meeting.
So,
But we-
but you said you couldn't do the 25th.
After this federal shutdown, yeah, I know that's, we're recovering from damage. So
Uh-huh.
so I know that one's already committed for me. But if that's what works, good, do it. You know,
Can we
Could
poll
go
them if they're available either or both of those dates? And maybe we get a sense, based upon their availability, what's going to work best.
Mm-hmm.
I think it could work either way, you know, where they're coming in to inform us, or that we're participating.
Two-way street, yeah.
Yeah.
It's intended to be a two-way
That's what it always
conversation.
was, yeah.
Mhm.
Remembering back to, that's exactly, remembering back to those previous sessions, that's
Yeah.
exactly what it was.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Heather?
So I just wanted to give a little kudos to the Public Works Department, because I think they often hear the negative and not the positive. And I've had some residents come up to me in the last couple of weeks and actually compliment Public Works on doing a good job with the storms we've had and the road conditions and sidewalks. So please pass that along. And also, thought it was really funny, one of the residents said that my Public Works guys were doing a great job mine. So please let Bill know that that resident considered the Public Works guys my guys, so. He said that my guys were doing a good job in Public Works. Anyway, I had to drive to Rutland today and was driving some of the back roads through Rutland to go around the traffic, and there were sidewalks that had not been plowed. You could see where people had walked, where the sidewalk was, you know, from the tracks, and they were snow covered. So we are really fortunate what we have here, and I think we should be thankful for, even when they're not 100%, they're better than a lot of other places, and we should be thankful and appreciate the work that the guys do. So I just wanted to.
Okay, thank you, Heather. I just want to let everybody know that Kathleen, Jim, and I met for lunch with Secretary of Transportation Joe Flynn and the state's lead engineer, bridge engineer Wayne Simmons, on February 11th to get an update, a number of reasons to ask to just meet with them. Number one was to check in after our first really major construction season, to have some two-way exchange. I think both sides seem to be very happy with the way things went this year. They met all of the targets. They would say they met most of the targets, but anything that they missed was really negligible and wasn't noticeable to us in the community. There was some weather impacts, for instance. But we wanted to check in, and the big ask was that they come and present to us and give us what to expect for next year and then the follow-on year, because this is the contract that they're letting right now. And so they've agreed to come in and present to us on April 9th. Actually, that's not a good one to shift. So we want the
looks like
March-
we're targeting March 25th.
Yeah, it
March
sounds like
25th, yes. I hadn't put it on my calendar yet, but it's in my head, so better get it on my calendar so we don't move that, because that's when they're supposed to come in and present to us so that we will have a good sense for how the project will flow. And that's when it has come up that in that final part of the final design and engineering, as they're looking at the day by day and how long it's going to take and what the estimates were, is that they were running short in that one area, and that's why they came to brief and ask for some variance, because they needed that in order to change the contract a little bit. One of the things that we asked is there a way, and they're going to continue to look at this, that by them getting a head start, maybe can they work enough that they could potentially open that Merchants Row Bridge a little bit earlier in the 10-week closure. And so, a little bit of give and take. It's too early for them to make any commitments, but he did commit that they will do everything they can. I will say that in our dealings with this, they have always worked very hard to ensure that they're taking the town's needs in consideration of the project, for instance, to ensure that they're working around the shutdown for that graduation weekend. And that's on their calendar, and that is a blocked-out weekend. They will not be working on that weekend. So they have been fulfilling all of their commitments that they've made to us. And then they recognized that they had an obligation in our contractual relationship to come to us and ask and have our input in the planning if it was going to impact us differently, which is what that does by the early closure. But they've already, when they first kind of talked about it, there was going to be all this equipment up at the roadside, but now he's already figuring out how we can drop the equipment to the track and open up all that parking. And so I think we will continue we just have to continue to have the discussions with them. But any changes they are supposed to bring forward to us. So April 9th, we'll get a good peek at what the next couple of years will look like. With that, I think we got an executive session, Kathleen. Heather, are you willing?
That would be great.
In accordance with Vermont's open meeting law requirements, I move that the board find that premature general knowledge of the consideration of contracts and personnel issues would clearly place the Select Board at a substantial disadvantage because the Select Board risks disclosing its litigation strategy if it discusses the contracts and personnel issues in public.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
I further move that the board enter into executive session to discuss contracts and personnel issues and under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, so your executive session at 9:03.
Kathleen, when you